Does evil come from within, or does it come from the podcast? This week on America's most neighborly podcast, The Pod People, we invite you to succumb to the darkness, emphasis on come. And on that note, I'm your old European pervert, Matisse Van Rossum.
Who's that flipping the light switch? Oh, it's just me, Podferatu.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Knock. From the hit movie Nosferatu.
Hair knock, 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 knocking on heaven's door.
Knock, knock, knocking. Also, I have a mouth this episode, or specifically a mustache, because
a mustache.
We're covering Mustache-Feratu tonight, boys, and I could not be more excited. Stash-Feratu, I think.
Stash-Feratu.
If we had any time, we could annoying orange my face onto the poster from the movie, like out of the coming out of the darkness.
Our first episode of the new year, our first episode recording fully remotely. Cleveland is on his phone on a balcony somewhere because his podcasting equipment is in transit.
That's right. It's in a pod on its way here. It'll be here at the end of the week. But yeah, in the meantime, I am here. I'll actually pull the camera back and show you. I'm on a beautiful balcony tonight, which I think is quite fitting for the episode, considering let's go back to mouth vision. Considering that the movie is spooky and nightly, and you get it.
Well, for most people listening to this, they're just hearing the audio, but for Patreon subscribers, you could be watching the video for this right now. It's great.
You could be looking at my mouth right now. Yeah.
You could be looking at, staring straight down Cleveland's mustache.
It's full-on nostril vision over here. You're really missing out, honestly.
Not Nosferatu.
Nosferatu. Excellent.
Well, if it wasn't abundantly clear at this point, we're talking about Nosferatu, the brand new Robert Eggers adaptation of Nosferatu, maybe the longest anticipated movie in this podcast's history. Originally announced way back in 2015, before this podcast didn't even exist. I remember when we were talking on a very early episode before Cleveland's time about how Robert Eggers was doing The Lighthouse after The Witch, and we were like, what happened to Nosferatu? Well, that was 7 years ago, and what happened to Nosferatu is it kept getting delayed, but it's finally out. We've seen it. I've seen it twice. I went and saw it again this morning, more fully absorbed the text, and we're here to talk about it. Boys, first impressions on Nosferatu.
Goddamn that stash. That beautiful fucking stash highlighted the film. I'm not even kidding. All of the
so crusty
stuff is incredible. It is. It's just smeared in cum. This is why I made sure to get mine a little crusty as well before the episode. But no, I loved every minute of it. I could keep gushing, but I'll leave. Let's see what Ben has to say.
I'm a little worried about this conversation because I came out of the movie thinking it was really, really great. I really, really liked it. I didn't love it. And I have some serious problems. However, overall, it's a fantastic movie. I will say, really great stuff. A ton of great performances, great cinematography, great moments. Fucking Willem Dafoe, holy shit. Lily Rose Depp, also.
Honestly, the biggest surprise of the movie for me is her performance, because I was concerned about that. I didn't watch The Idol. I know you did, Ben, and had some mixed feelings on it. But I mean, otherwise, all I really knew going into this was that she was replacing Anya Taylor-Joy, who had originally signed on for this role, but because it kept getting delayed when they were shooting this, she was shooting Furiosa. And you know what? In hindsight, totally fine with that. I have no doubt that Taylor-Joy would have been great here, but I'm happy that we got to have her in Furiosa, and I think that Lily Rose Depp was a surprisingly good replacement.
I think she
And,
brings a physicality to the role that I don't know if we would get the same flavor of with Anya Taylor-Joy, to be honest. Like, certainly Anya Taylor-Joy is a very physical actor as well, but it's sort of a unique position.
Yeah.
You know, every actor brings their own things to the table, and I think what Lily Rose Depp brings here is really much needed for the film.
Well, I'll be curious to get into some of your gripes with the movie soon, because I will say I this movie was not quite what I was expecting going in. Like, I mean, it's very obviously a Robert Eggers film, but also like.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it had some of the things I was expecting, but I think that in the way that it chose to adapt the Count Orlok / Dracula character, how it chose to focus on specific thematic elements from the story over the others, I've been seeing a lot of people be like, this is Eggers' weakest script. And to an extent, I agree with that, especially after a second viewing today. I think that it's pretty much exactly what it needs to be. And similar to my experience with Longlegs, I felt like watching it again, sort of devoid of the expectations I had going in and sort of more willing to accept it for what it's trying to do. Like, some of my own qualms with it kind of vanished. But what was really surprising, pleasantly so for me, is how unique this take is as compared to the other two adaptations of the story that share the same name. Obviously, there's been a bajillion adaptations of Dracula, of the Dracula story, but this is more like a direct remake of the F.W. Murnau Nosferatu from 1922, where they had all the names of the characters and stuff changed to try to avoid lawsuit by Bram Stoker. They still got the shit suit out of them, and were ordered to destroy all prints of the movie. Some were hidden away, thankfully, so we have it today. But then we've also got like Herzog's take, which we covered, years ago on the podcast, which I really love, that I think is more of a thematic departure from the original story, kind of makes the vampire character more sympathetic, or at least tragic, if not outright sympathetic. And like, that performance from Kinski is like so transcendent for me that I went into this worrying, is this movie going to be able to stand up to Herzog? And I don't think it's trying to. It's very much trying to do its own thing, and I think that is 1,000% to its benefit. But I'll let you talk now, Ben.
Sure. Yeah. No. Like you said, like, it's big shoes to fill, right? Murnau's classic Nosferatu is a masterpiece. It's like one of the founding texts for horror film, and Herzog's Nosferatu is also a masterpiece. It's also a big swing for Herzog, right? Like, Herzog hadn't done horror movies at all prior to that, really. And so it's very out of his wheelhouse. My biggest complaint, and if you guys think this is unfair, that's totally reasonable, but I think this is kind of Eggers playing it safe a little bit in terms of working very in his wheelhouse and not taking enough big swings with the material that it kind of just feels a little bloodless to me at times. I think when it works very well. There's a lot of great moments in it. There's a lot of great performances in it. Everything I would expect from an Eggers film. But when you're working on well-treaded material, like, Nosferatu, like, I expect more of a signature put on the material than what we got here, to be honest. I think, again, it's really good, and the influences that it pulls from the Murnau version, and even the Herzog and Coppola versions, are really inspired and interesting. However, again, I just wish there was a little more to make it more of his own. And, whether that would be focusing a little bit more on the thematic material or making it gnarlier or more bleak or grimy. Like, there's a lot of avenues you could do that. I just think it didn't quite go far enough in any of those. And again, like, I think this is a really, really good movie, but that's the thing holding it back for me from being a movie I love. I think, honestly, out of the 4, it's probably my least favorite Eggers so far, especially coming after The Northman, which was such a big swing for Eggers. This feels like a bit of a retreat back to his comfort zone, which isn't necessarily a bad thing again, but
I think that's a fair take. I don't entirely agree, and maybe over the course of the conversation, I'll be able to sway you on some of those things. Not that that's necessarily my goal, of course. But I do think that, like, the
it is
root
mine.
of what you're saying...
It is wrong, and I'm going to convince him why on the marketplace of ideas.
You were wrong, and here's why. Here's a list.
Like, would you like, dog?
But no, I do think that sort of the core of your argument that it's Eggers' safest film to date, I think that's correct. I think that is objectively a correct take, and I do think that his experience making The Northman has something to do with that.
Yeah, 100%.
That was a huge swing, a massively budgeted film, the broadest, grandest scope that he's done to date, and he's not shy talking about what a nightmare the whole production was.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that probably did scare him away from pushing some boundaries here. But I do think that where this movie really excels, and where I disagree that Eggers is not putting some of his own flair on this, is I think that it is a really unique and interesting cultural take on the story in a way that others are not, in a way that feels very Eggers to me. His highly researched, highly attention to detailed approach in the way things are supposed to look, sound, feel, in sort of like capturing a time and place. Like, my man only does period pieces, right? At least to date. So, and I think that that's the stuff that excites me the most about this movie, is that, like, this, even though narratively it's, pretty much beat for beat the story that we all know, to the degree that I don't think we need to get bogged down in plot points in our discussion of this movie. Everybody knows Dracula. I think that those details, like, really shined for me, especially on a second viewing. Cleve?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in. Okay, so after I watched Nosferatu, I rewatched the 22 right now, and I was pretty surprised by how similar the beats were to the Eggers one. And I would say it was pleasantly so. Hutter goes to the castle, and, like, he's sent by Knock, and all of those elements are the same, even with Knock, which was sort of a surprise to me with the 22, because I couldn't remember the estate agent, but that's all there. It's all the same. But what I will say in terms of tone and dealing with that subject matter and taking things to a further level, I think he does a lot of the same things that he does in The Witch. And I think that it very much has his fingerprint on it. In fairness, like, Ben, you were saying it, he sticks to his wheelhouse here. I think he does all largely to his strengths, in that, to spoil some events, we see Count Orlok on screen, like, kill 2 children. Also, the sexuality, the sexual component of the vampires here is no longer allegorical. Like, it is overt in a way I haven't necessarily seen it displayed before. Like, yes, vampires are inherently erotic. Vampires are often an allegory for eroticism or even homosexuality or whatever, pick your film. But I don't often see it, like, featuring so many, like, overt sex scenes, especially when this vampire is also, to me, one of the most ghoulish depictions of Count Orlok. Like, he's a literal, like, zombie creature. He's malformed with weird, like, he's got his freaky little legs and shit that we see later. But
He's a corpse. He's a literal corpse. Yeah.
He's not, yeah, exactly. He's not just a vampire in this movie. He is a corpse. He fits closer to like those same depictions of Draugr, of like of ghouls, of the living dead, as much as he does like
Which
just
is
a cool looking guy with sharp teeth.
which is the traditional vampire folklore.
Yes.
Like it has been widely perverted and perverted is maybe the wrong word, but changed by pop culture and various adaptations. But like, yeah, the actual vampire lore is like these are living corpses. Like they're not just like sexy pale guys, like they are the undead. And I do think he really leads into that here.
Yeah, it's a far cry from Edward Cullen, to say the least.
Yes,
but I agree with you, Cleve,
even
that
from
like
Bela Lugosi, right? Like it's a far cry from like and to have him be so ghoulish and to still focus the sexual component, to me, is, I think, a very, very difficult line to walk, and it does an incredible job of it, in my opinion. Like that we can still understand, I think, and relate to Ellen, and her motivations in this film, and it's chilling when we do, or at least for me.
Well, what I like about this adaptation too, that sort of like goes into what you're saying, is that the sexual component in this is sex devoid of romance, which I feel like is a take that you don't often see with vampires. Because I think like I've heard a lot of people complaining that this movie is not horny enough, which is like, did you watch the same movie that I did?
That's crazy to me.
But I think when you're comparing it to something like Coppola's version, Bram Stoker's Dracula,
extremely horny.
That is like maybe one of the horniest vampire movies I've ever seen. It's very erotic and it's all sexy, right? And it's all sexy, it's all romantic. And in this, like, there is a really, really powerful sexual undertone to everything. But like you said, like, Orlok is just a straight up creature, first of all. And also it's sexual appetite devoid of romance. Like there's even the scene later when he comes to her in the house and he says the line to her, he says, "I am an appetite." Yeah. And she says, "You can't love." And he says, "I cannot, but I will not be sated without you." He even says that he does not love her. There is no loving aspect of it. It is purely hunger. It is purely appetite. And I think to have that sort of spin on the sexual romantic element to it is really nice. It's refreshing, I think, in this case.
Yeah. And I would say that element is probably where, the kind of unique take on it most shines through. And I think it's paired with a backdrop of sexual repression, right? Like where
also, yes,
sexual expression wasn't as free as it is today. I almost, again, I wish it would have focused a little bit more on that. I think sometimes the reverence to the material kind of puts that in the backseat at times in, telling the broader story, which is fine. But, I think the Murnau influences are so deep here. Even down to the cinematography. I think about all of the moonlit sequences where, it's almost monochromatic blue, or all the candlelight sequences where it's almost sepia tone. And like these are the same color palettes as Nosferatu, color dyed monochromatic film. And I think that's a really smart way to kind of take direct visual cues from the old and kind of give it some new life.
To the degree that all of the nighttime stuff in this, at least the exterior nighttime stuff, is all day for night. Exactly the same as in the Murnau one. I mean, in Murnau, it's more of a necessity, because back then you just could not shoot film at night.
Yeah.
But in this, it feels like more of a direct stylistic decision to sort of like wash out those blues and have like the really like harsh moonlight, I think it's great. Yeah, I definitely thought about that stuff for the outdoor photography, but I hadn't even considered that the candlelight being sort of a stand-in for the sepia in the Murnau, and that I think you're spot on.
Yeah, it's
It works super well.
He's working with his same photographer from all of his movies, Yaron Blaschke, which, I mean, talk about an incredible creative partnership. Like, I mean, Eggers' stuff has such a distinct visual style to it, and it's like you can really tell it's all shot by the same person. And I did read in the lead up to this movie's release that they took the Barry Lyndon approach and shot all of the interior stuff by actual candlelight, which instead of having NASA build special lenses for them, they just used like thousands of candles on set to provide enough light, which I imagine was very difficult to shoot, but boy, does it ever pay off here.
That poor PA lighting thousands of candles.
No, dude, the cinematographer was doing it all himself.
Oh,
he was hand lighting and extinguishing all the candles himself to provide the right level of light, which is a dedication to the craft that I respect immensely. Also, good to not make your poor PA do that.
Yeah. Being able to allot that much time in your budget to have your DP light all these candles is so wild. But honestly, it turned out great. And like, this movie does have
you can run rehearsals and stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, there's other stuff you can do on set.
This film does have some of the best shots in any Eggers films. There are several just absolutely striking shots. Some of the silhouette shots, the shadow play. I think my favorite shot scene is the scene where Ellen and Thomas are, talking in the candlelight bedroom, and she starts screaming at him and, upset about how he didn't write while, he was away. And it gets very emotionally intense, but there's like an undertone of like creepiness to it all. And again, Lily Rose Depp's physicality in the role there, as she almost seizes, very reminiscent of Isabella Gianni, but it's lit all from below almost with candlelights. So you get this really ominous look to it all. And it just looks so beautiful.
Yeah, she looks fucking ghastly, man. Like, in that scene, she does things with her face that I did not know that the human face was capable of.
Yeah, she does that thing with her tongue, or like comes out and over, like, and it's like,
yeah, she does. Really she does like the Undertaker eyes, and like does this crazy shit with her tongue. Oh man, yeah, it's incredible. Like, so, like, just immense fucking physicality for that role. Just like all of her fits and seizures. And that's another thing that I like about this adaptation too, is like that character in Dracula is always sort of like, entranced by Dracula, is under his sway. But in this, it really feels like demonic possession.
Mm-hmm.
It's like his sort of like power over the human spirit in this feels more acute than in most adaptations, I think, in a really fun way.
Yeah, well, it feels like not only just demonic possession, but like you were saying earlier, like being overtaken with lust. And
yeah,
I wanted to touch on that again really briefly, because I think it's absolutely true that Orlok represents this animalistic desire. And he turns into wolves. He's the hounds of love. He's chasing after you, and that he is like
the hounds of fucking.
Yeah, right. And he's non-romantic, but he's very lustful, and I think that operates really well as a foil to Nicholas Holt's character and their love being especially romantic, right? But the way that the two of them are also caught up in that moment is I found to just be entirely chilling, and it reminded me of pick your Cronenberg film, but particularly Crash, I would say, is there's several sequences in Crash where we talked about it on the episode, where he begins by sort of attempting to arouse the viewer and then pulls the rug out from under them and disgusts them. And I felt a lot of very similar emotions watching this scene, and I think it's by design, like that. The goal there is to make you feel kind of almost disgusted at yourself for watching the film, and I think it's very hard to do that. But considering like how good does prevail in this story, I think it is through romantic love. I think that it is, for the want to see right in the world, to destroy this creature, to see it gone at her own self-sacrifice is powerful stuff, and it's an excellent foil to his kind of rutting nature, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to some extent. I think that, like, we are told a lot in the movie that Ellen and Thomas love each other. They say they love each other a lot, but we don't ever really see it. And I think that's also by design, and I'm fine with that too. Because in that one scene where it's like we do get the sex scene between them right after the scene that Ben was just talking about, or in the same scene rather, that's not, like, that is them being overcome by the spirit of Orlok, right? Like, that is them affected by his hunger. There is nothing romantic or loving about what they're doing in that scene. Like, she begins it by getting down on her knees and saying, "You will never please me like he can." And he just like grabs her and throws her down on the bed. It's like, well, I'll show you, And they even end that with her being like, "Yes, let him see. It's not sexy, it's not romantic, it's not loving. And it's like, yes, her love does triumph at the end, in the sense that, she makes the sacrifice of herself and her own body and spirit to keep him occupied until the sun rises. But I don't feel like it's necessarily out of love for Thomas that she chooses that sacrifice, but rather as a desire to prove to herself that her spirit is good. You know what I mean? Because her big emotional conflict throughout the movie, as she asks to Willem Dafoe, is like, does evil come from within us or from beyond? That she feels like she was born connected to this dark spiritual world. That it's when she called out in her prayers for something, for anything to answer her, that's when Orlok answered, right? And set this whole chain of events in motion. So she feels inextricably connected to the same darkness that Orlok inhabits. And I think that her making a selfless sacrifice is her way of saying, no, evil does not come from within, or it doesn't come from within me. I'm not evil, That's the way I read it.
In a lot of ways, this is a sort of love triangle for Ellen, right? Between Orlok, who, kind of represents a sort of primal desire, and Thomas, who, represents more of a social obligation.
And an idealized sort of love,
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you were mentioning, there doesn't feel like that much of a romantic core between Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp, at least in terms of like the romanticism of it all. It feels like obligation more than anything. But there is a core there, and that's what drives Ellen in the film, right? And I do wish that was pushed a little further, but
and to be clear, I don't think that the characters are lying when they say they love each other. Like, I just don't think that the film shows us any real, like, true romantic love between them, and I think that that's by design. Like, I think I think Ellen is telling the truth when she loves Thomas, like she does say multiple times how like the fits and the nightmares and all of the bad stuff like stopped when she met him, when they got married. So like I do think that she kind of views that as him sort of like having saved her from her darker nature or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't consider this movie necessarily a love story in the way that I would even Herzog's version, because it's like I think what's so wonderful and beautiful about Herzog's adaptation of this story is that like Kinski's Dracula is sympathetic. He's evil, and he is representative of death. He brings the plague to the town, but the whole point is that his nature is evil and there's nothing he can do about it. But that even though he is evil, he is still lonely. He does still desire love. I much more believe that Kinski's Dracula loves Isabella Johnny in a way that Orlok does not love Ellen in this. You know what I mean? And that's why
I want to add too that
yeah.
You say that he's sympathetic. Not only is he sympathetic, I would say he's a pathetic simp.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely, he is.
Yeah, like in every way. He is a pathetic simp.
Exactly.
Like, and I mean that like with even still like with love. Like I think I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, and the complexity of that character is so interesting because he's not like a misunderstood, character. Like he is evil, like he's death, but even death and even evil wants, can hold the desire to be loved. And that's what Herzog's adaptation is about. And this is like, nah, he's a ghoul. He's a fucking pure evil ghoul. He just want to eat, and he just want to fuck, and he wants to eat while he's fucking.
Yeah,
like,
he is the darkness born out of the earth. Yeah.
It's like the Seinfeld episode where George tries to eat a pastrami sandwich while he's having sex because he wants to combine his lusts, and then he gets his wires scrambled, and so whenever he starts eating a good sandwich, then he gets like sexually aroused. That's Orlok in this.
Yeah,
that's Nosferatu. Yeah, he's George Costanza.
Count Orlok, Count Big Snack.
Let's talk a little bit more about Orlok. I want to talk first about the look of Orlok in this movie.
Ash.
Let's talk that stash. Let's talk that hairdo. I will say, going into this with the trailers, I thought we were gonna get like 3 minutes of Orlok direct. I was surprised at how much Orlok we get in this movie. He's all over here.
I was happy.
Yeah.
And yet Eggers does pull his punches in an interesting way for at least the first part of the movie. Like having the restraint for us to never clearly see his face until the moment when Thomas like unearths him in his sarcophagus after he's been there a couple of nights, like having that be the first like full close-up look we get of his face. I love that restraint, man. And I have been seeing a lot. The most general complaints about this movie are related to all things Orlok. The look, the mustache, the voice people complain about.
Crazy.
And
That's crazy.
I could not disagree more with any of it. I should have expected this from Eggers, but it seems like in his design, he was just going for like as close to the actual Vlad Dracula as he could. Like all those. If you've ever seen those old paintings of Vlad Tepes with his big mustache and his furry hat and everything,
his
that's what Bill Skarsgård. That's what Bill Skarsgård looks like in this movie.
It's great, and
I fucking love it.
Well, and it serves three fantastic purposes. One, aesthetically, it's just sick. It's a great choice just alone for how cool it looks, in my opinion. Two, yes, it serves a historical purpose. And again, That's Egger's deal. Like, much of his dialogue is
That's his
often
bag.
pulled directly from historical transcripts, etc. So like the design of Orlok looks like we're not even in Transylvania, we're in Wakala, right? And or Wallachia, sorry.
Wakanda.
Wallachia. No, we're in Wakanda.
Shut up.
Not Nosferatu, Wakanda forever.
Get that shit out of here. Shut up. Yes, we're in Wallachia, and but the other purpose it serves, and Tease and I, we talked about this a little bit when we walked out of the film, and I couldn't agree more, and that is that it distances Orlok from all the other Orloks and all the other Draculas. Like, I don't think we've seen a Dracula or Orlok with a mustache up till this point, or dressed so traditionally, minus for the dinner scene in the 22 version. I think he also wears a Tepes hat. But beyond that, that's the case. One other thing I want to mention about his design is how he wears the shadows like a cloak.
So cool.
I did not realize like just how horrifying and disfigured he was until the final sequence where we see him in full and in daylight, like literally in daylight. But
Yeah.
I could tell he was like that the whole time, even from a single viewing. And I think that's really difficult to do. Like, you get little glimpses like on the sides of his head here and there where like there might be a little scarring or something, but it's all so well hidden because it looks like he is like wearing the shadows as a cloak to hide these things, to hide how ghoulish he is. He's always sort of submerged in the shadows or backlit by that gorgeous fucking fireplace.
There's a whole discussion to be had about the shadow work, and I want to get there, but real quick, before we move past it, I will push back slightly about us not having an adaptation of Dracula with a mustache before. That's not entirely true. We've never had one like this, but and also I think it's been a long time since I've read Bram Stoker's Dracula, like the book, but I think he does have a mustache in the book. Might be wrong about that. But in Coppola's adaptation with Gary Oldman, and like all the Transylvania stuff in the castle, he doesn't. He's got like the big Princess Leia hair. But when he goes to London and he becomes sexy Gary Oldman in the top hat with the little glasses, he does have like a little mustache and goatee. So that's the first one. And the second one is a much more recent film that we've covered. How could you forget about Dr. Michael Morbius, Medical Dracula? And his little goatee.
Oh, fuck off.
So true.
Again, fuck off. No.
How could you forget
count.
Dr. Michael Morbius, Medical Dracula? The MD stands for Medical Dracula.
I won't count the Morbius movie, but I will count the other depictions of Morbius, because I actually do like his design in the comics. He's cool. And in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
He does have a little mustache in the comic book, doesn't he?
Yeah, it looks great. Like, yeah, his design is amazing. Also, how could I forget the cover art for what's the name of the game? It's got all the little doodads and they're flitting around everywhere. The Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors has a mustache.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I guess also the Castlevania version of Dracula does have.
Does it still count if Alucard is Dracula spelled backwards? I don't know the logistics on that one.
No, Alucard is his son. Dracula is also in the games.
Yeah.
I didn't know the game deep lore. Yeah. That's my mistake.
Alucard, that's not even deep lore. In some games, you just play as Alucard. That whatever. My point is that Dracula has had mustaches before this, but that doesn't change the fact that I think this is the most powerful Dracula mustache I've ever seen.
And probably ever will in our lifetime.
And it's like in some of those scenes in the castle where, like you said, he's like backlit by the fire, and it's like we get wide shots and you can like kind of see his face, and it's like in those scenes I'm like, does he have a mustache? Did they give Dracula a mustache? I'm kind of like leaning in, and then it's like, and then we see him in his full glory, and it's like, oh, he's got a mustache. He's got.
I love the whole castle sequence in this film with the introduction to Orlok. You could say it for the whole film, but we really lose Bill Skarsgård in this role. Like, he's not Pennywise by any means. He's a singular, unique character here. And
obviously he's in some pretty. Yeah, obviously he's in some pretty heavy prosthetics, but like if you didn't tell me that it was Bill Skarsgård, I wouldn't know it. I don't think looking at him ever.
No, and he again, incredible physical performance as well. Again, like going back to the castle introduction, I love how there's some restraint as he's revealed. You know, he's out of focus, he's in darkness. You know, we get bits and pieces and put it together. And overall, just like the whole castle sequence is the movie at its most abstract and surreal. It feels like a shift between the first act, where it's so abstract and like, you know, surreal and restrained, to the second and third act, where it's more traditionally the Nosferatu story.
And you know, I think that it's hard to speak on this with any degree of certainty, but it does feel like some of that is intentional, because when Thomas is in Transylvania, when he's, you know, in Orlok's realm, the whole thing is that, like, this is the old world, right? This is a place where superstition still flourishes. He sees the Romani people, you know, before this do their ritual where they dig up the corpse. And fucking...
I love his introduction going into the village where there's some guy just sternly playing the lute at him. Like,
oh yeah, that dude fucking dancing and doing all the fucking like slappy stuff, and then like the innkeeper comes out and he's like, "Get all these fucking gypsies out of here."
Well, I'll tell you what it reminded me of is it felt like a sort of a soft homage to Herzog's Dracula. In Herzog's Dracula, as we all know, as we've discussed on that episode, like as Thomas approaches the castle, it's ruins, but when he is inside, it is full and alive, and complete. And here, I think they do something very similar with the village, where when he enters the village, it's lively, there's children playing, exchanges are being had, and people are celebrating and dancing, and, you know, just doing general Romani things. And then after his midnight vision and he's startled awake, no one is there, and the town is suddenly abandoned and empty, and it looks like it has been for some time.
They stole his horse.
They stole his horse.
They literally stole his horse. I mean, I just I think, like, yeah, I think that's a totally fair rating. I just took it as more as like, Romanis are nomadic, they're travelers, so they literally just moved on and they took his horse with them. But my point to what Ben was saying is, like, yeah, in this part of the movie, he's in the old world, steeped in superstition, steeped in magic and monsters and stuff. So it's more dreamlike, it's more otherworldly, it's more surreal. And then when they go back to the city, this is, you know, the age of enlightenment and science. Like, that's a big theme in this movie, is like all of these, you know, sort of scientific explanations for everything, that to us as, you know, modern people seems like superstition too. Like, just I that's a whole other discussion with Ralph Ineson, Willem Dafoe, and all of the like pseudoscience medical stuff they're trying to do to cure Ellen of her hysteria or whatever. But like fits. At one point, like her lady fits, yeah. At one point, like, Willem Dafoe even says, like, when Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is all being like, you know, he's scoffing at the idea that this is a demon or an otherworldly being or whatever, and Willem Dafoe even says, like, we're not enlightened, but rather blinded by the gaseous light of science. That, like, you know, this obsession with reason and empirical logic is in fact a hindrance in like trying to deal with this like literally otherworldly threat. So I think that having all the stuff at the castle be more sort of like surreal and dreamlike suits it. And then like having the stuff in the city in Visborg be more like grounded is like, yeah, this old world monster is coming to the new world, you know. That shit all works for me a-okay. But I will say, while we're talking about the castle stuff, I had already mentioned this to Cleveland, but I don't know if you dug up this little tidbit, Ben. All of the interior stuff in the castle, same castle Herzog shot in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw that Eggers didn't realize it, though, until after the fact.
No way. Come on, bro.
Big doubt on that. He
doubt.
was saying in interviews that he intentionally...
in the courtyard. Like, yeah.
He said in interviews that he intentionally avoided Herzog's Nosferatu until after he was done filming, so it didn't influence him. But I'm doubtful on that as well. Like,
man, if that is true, then at least his cinematographer had seen Herzog's version before they shot this. If it's true that Eggers had not, then at least their cinematographer had, because like the visual language of Herzog's, especially in that castle, is all over this movie. And it literally being the same castle does help with that. But I mean, the whole fucking sequence, like you're talking about, Clay, and in fairness, the exterior of the castle, that stuff is a different castle.
Sure.
But like the part where he comes in there and like the doors open and Orlok's silhouette is just there at the end of the way, absolutely incredible. But like, that's like, how can you look at that and say that, oh yeah, nobody involved with this movie has seen Herzog's version?
You can't tell me that this has been a passion
apparent.
project for Eggers since he was a child and he hadn't seen Herzog's Nosferatu. That just smells of bullshit to me.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Honestly. And maybe he didn't actively study it a bunch before shooting. Like, that's more reasonable, but like he had to have seen it.
I would think so. I mean, at this point it's pure, like, all we have is pure speculation. Like, I will say that, like, yeah, Herzog's version is more quote unquote obscure than Murnau's. But I mean, yeah, at the same time, like, how do you do an adaptation of Nosferatu and you haven't seen Herzog's version? You know, I will say, like, while we're in the castle and talking about going back to like the shadow stuff, probably my favorite shot or sequence of shots in this movie, in a film that is fucking rich with them, is after he like discovers Orlok's sarcophagus and wakes him up and he's chasing him, and he goes back to his room and he's like hiding with his back up against the door, and we see Orlok's shadow like looming over him through the window, and it like does like a motion with its hand, and he gets up and turns around and opens the door, and then Orlok is in the hallway flanked by the wolves. Oh man, it's so fucking cool. And just like that idea that like his shadow exists as like a separate entity from himself is such a fucking cool thing to do for this type of movie, especially like referencing Murnau's stuff, which really some of the most famous stuff is like the shadow work in that, with like Orlok going up the stairs with his long claws and his hands out, you know, like taking that and really making it feel like Orlok's magic, like he works his magic through his shadow, is so fucking cool.
It's incredible. Yeah, and again, like wearing them like a cloak, you know, using them as an arm, as an extension of himself, is just terrifying. And it's just so gothic.
I love his big furred cloak too in this, like just like the silhouette that it creates with his shoulders and his head, just like this huge like fucking fur coated cloak. Much nicer than or much cooler than the Bela Lugosi like traditional vampire cape.
Careful now, careful. Big fan.
I'm
big
sorry,
fan
I don't know if that's. Look, me too, and like I obviously Lugosi's Dracula is an iconic look, probably the most iconic version of the character we've ever seen. But I know this old Romanian pervert version of Dracula really does it for me.
I do prefer it for sure, but I do love both. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's so sick. The dining sequence. I would be remiss to not mention that they pull an homage from one of my favorite things, and that is La Belle La Bête. When Nicholas Hoult is sitting at the table, and he cuts his finger while slicing the bread, like in the original, and a trance is put over him, and suddenly he is no longer at the table, but he is by the fireplace. And then the statues supporting the fireplace pivot and look at him as smoke comes out of their nostrils. And it's right out of the French Beauty and the Beast film, which is beautiful because that film is from a similar era to Nosferatu. And so it's wonderful to see like just the language of like early cinema like across this film. I think there's something to say about
even there were even shades of Dreyer's vampire in here. With, you know, some of the light and dark work, especially. A silent film is all over this film, which is great.
I will say one of my minor disappointments is how sort of understated that dinner scene is in this movie, and how they just kind of like breeze past it. It's like, I get they're going for a different thing. Again, I don't want them to copy Herzog, and I guess I hadn't even fucking seen it, but like the dinner scene is like one of my favorite sequences in the Herzog movie, where Kinski gives his little listen, the children of the night, and they're making their music, you know, and like when he cuts his finger, how you know, Kinski is like he's like sexually aroused, or is like he's in pain, like not sucking the shit out of his finger, you know, and then he does grab it, and it's like I understand you can't quite do that as easily, like trying to hide Orlok in this part of the movie, but
I just wish that in his super
breezed by a little bit too quickly for me.
I just wish that in his super bass boosted, like fucked up Eastern European accent, he had said, "I don't drink wine," like the Bela Lugosi one. It would have been totally fitting at all, but
wine.
I don't drink wine.
God,
his voice, all the R rolling,
voice is so good in this.
I can see like people like finding it funny, but I really did find it quite like earnestly terrifying. And it's nice because we've talked in the past about like how this aesthetic has sort of been like made spooky but not scary, like this era of horror, and you know, castles, and that accent I think is a big part of it too, is I'm a Dracula, but like here they make it scary again. Much like I think one of my favorite examples in media of making this era of like top hats and canes like scary again is Bloodborne. And I see a lot of the same like sort of techniques used here. It's worth noting too.
This movie had a big Bloodborne vibe for sure.
Oh yeah, well
Robert Eggers make a Bloodborne movie immediately.
Yeah, well I pulled up the scene, the carriage scene yesterday, the cutscene from Bloodborne where you take the carriage to Castle Cainhurst, where they do pull from Bela Lugosi's, and it's or just from Dracula in general. And
like,
I was kind of surprised by how similar it is to this film's version as well. I think it's probably the closest of the two sequences I would compare to any of them across each other. Like I love how the step stool just comes down on its own, and that silver light that's inside of the carriage, it's incredible. And this huge Clydesdales coming down the road are just thundering.
Yeah, the carriage sequence is so cool in this, where it's like when it opens, like it's lit because you can see through it. So it's like lit by the moonlight beyond. And I like how as he's like as Nicholas Hoult is like walking towards the carriage, like at a certain point when he gets close to the camera, he's no longer walking, he's gliding, he's floating, he's being pulled into the carriage, and then he just sort of like awakens as it's going over the bridge into the castle.
Like it's like he's falling asleep, like and they play with direction as well, like because if I remember correctly, like we see him looking down the road, and then we see him dead on, and then he's on the side of the road looking at the carriage horizontally, like, so he's changed angles, and we never see him pivot. Like, just the world is sort of moving on its own around it, much like the fireplace sequence later, where he sort of this sort of dark ichor, the shadow is just like brings people deep into slumbers and the dreams of death, and it's
well,
God, it's so cool, like
there's
how they play with that.
Yeah, there's that cool sequence where he sits down at the table and he like lays the contract out, and we see like the silhouette of Orlok on Thomas's right at the end of the table, like looking at the contract, and then he sort of like pulls out of frame, and then he's immediately at his left shoulder, like pouring him the glass of wine. It's like he just appears on the other side of him. It's so cool. I love that kind of sequence
beyond space and time. Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah. Man, yeah, and like earnestly cool, not corny. Like they really continuously pull it off throughout this film. I think
Swag.
across the board, the drip in this movie is immaculate. I want to talk about just, and it's just a note, but I have to mention just how fucking swag the fuck out. What's the name of the other guy? The one who's looking after not Mina.
Friedrich
Harding, yeah.
Harding, right? Played by help me out.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Craven the Hunter.
Craven the Hunter.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
The kick-ass kid.
I've heard some people found him to be out of place in the film. I couldn't disagree more. I actually really liked him in the movie. But I
saw it with my brother, and he really disliked Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie. I thought he was serviceable. Not great, but
it bugged me a little bit because it feels like he's majorly overacting, but I also feel like that might be intentional. I feel like that might be direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you look at period films and like upper class, I know it's set in Germany, but like that it has all the appearance and the accents of like British gentry, and
England,
that's how British gentry act, like they do put on, they literally put on airs, like that's what they do. So I thought it was very fitting to the sort of the style of period that he was trying to capture. But I gotta say that scene when they're on the beach and he's got the big fuzzy cuffs and the big top hat, my God, is he dripped out. Like, oh my God, his costume is so good in that scene, dude. Like, it looks amazing.
Man, the scene where he's introduced, where they're at his house, and he's like, he and Nicholas Hoult are like drinking and smoking, and he's like, good show, old sport. Congratulations on your sexy wife. Me personally, I can't stop busting ropes in my sexy wife. How droll!
Amazing. That is exactly how that scene goes too.
Yes, that's exactly how that scene goes.
Like how the
it's
trailer
it's like you have a sexy wife and I cannot stop fucking my sexy wife.
Yeah, I love how warm and charming and sweet and safe their house feels at first, before like the effects of Orlok like change everything in the household. I like the kids are I thought they were really adorable, like when they're running around and they're like, Daddy, there's a monster. Like, I thought that was pretty sweet. And then to see how that goes,
that is just straight up foreshadowing. That's just straight up foreshadowing for later in the movie. I was thinking that on rewatch because there's a monster in our room. I can hear him breathing under my bed. And it's like, that's another thing we haven't mentioned about Orlok that I really like, that makes him feel particularly corpse-like, is that he's always fucking wheezing. He's like a corpse. It's like his lungs barely work,
Yeah,
it's like they're full of holes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool.
I love that shit.
In addition, the wife of Harding's wife, one of my favorite moments in the movie is when she is taken by the nightly spells as well, and they're gathered around her in her bed, and clearly like it's not her that is speaking, it's Orlok, and she says to bring the children so they can see, and then she comes to and says, I'm not myself, and that's terrifying. Like that, yeah, Orlok like desperately has like a hunger to eat those little children. Like, and the fact that he's able to like puppet the mother to do that is really like it actually upsets me. It reminds me very much of Longlegs in that, and how Longlegs puppets
Mm.
families, to kill each other. And I find it, yeah, it really it breaks so many of those same like social
Well,
taboos, in the same way, and
they're
it's
driven
really
by
it
the
really
same
freaks me out.
they're driven by the same forces, aren't they? The power of
Satan,
Satan.
that's right,
Yeah,
devil,
Satan. Hail Satan,
devils in
the
both,
devil.
hail Satan.
Somebody else in another Discord I'm in was like, "Yeah, man, Orlok really squeezed those kids like they were fucking juice boxes." that is a probably the most brutal this movie gets, and it's all done in
Yeah.
silhouettes. It's like not even that gruesome, but like Emma Corrin like walking into the room and just seeing the silhouette against the window of Orlok like holding both of her children, one in each hand, like just tearing their throats out is fucking ghoulish, man. It is a
Yeah, the
bad time,
strength
bad time.
and the way he just casts them aside is like,
Yeah.
like again, like a juice box that's been emptied. Like he doesn't,
Yeah.
they're just containers. Like to him
Yeah.
is, yeah, ghoulish. And
Another
uh, yeah,
a detail that I found interesting in this movie that I'm not sure if it is something that they just did for this movie or if it's, part of old vampire lore or whatever, is that like most of the people that he drinks from in this movie, Orlok drinks from their chest, like over their heart. Like at least with like Nicholas Hoult and Lily Rose Depp and like Emma Corrin, like he bites their chest like right over their heart. Like the guy on the boat that he kills on the ship, like he sort of like tears his neck out. So it's like you get a little bit of that classic vampire thing, but I thought that was kind of an interesting spin on it. That it's
that's
not
what
just
that
the
blood's
vampire
pumping.
always going for the throat. I mean, if we want to talk about anatomically, it's like the arteries in your neck are going to be way bigger and more free flowing than biting directly above the rib cage. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I mean
I think it's cool.
the
I think it's
artery in your
cool.
neck is essentially the straw in the juice box for sure. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
but
Which is why
but
the
yeah, I
vampire go
do, I
for
like,
that.
it's, to me it's the romantic element of it, right? Like, and I don't mean
Right.
like romance, I mean like the romantic era. It
He's
really
well,
fits
he's
to
yeah,
that,
he's
like him biting over
tapping
the
he's
heart.
tapping right into their hearts. Yeah,
Eat
and
your
like
heart
I
out,
know
Orlok.
exactly. Eat your heart out. And in the sort of like grotesque sex scene between Thomas and Ellen, she commands him to kiss her on her heart, kiss my heart, like Orlok,
Yeah.
I also really like that when he drinks from people, that what they do with the sound design is they like really enhance like the slurping and gulping of it. It makes it more grotesque, I think, that like you really feel like he is like fucking draining these people of their blood. You get those deep nasty gulps,
Yeah.
Ugh, creepy. You were gonna say, Ben, can we talk about something? I would
Yeah,
love to
no,
talk about
before we
something.
move on though, as an aside on the kid murder scene, obviously like
Yay!
the most horrific scene of the movie, but in my theater, the person sitting next to me in the theater must have been like super high or something, because they were laughing at the most inexplicable times, and they started cracking up when the kids were being slurped. And honestly, that was almost more unsettling than the scene itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like there are a few chuckle-worthy moments in this. That is not one of them, I don't think.
She was laughing at the most confounding moments. Like anytime Willem Dafoe showed up, he wouldn't even have to say a line. She would just start cracking up for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I guess
some
he's got
people
kind
like
of a
just laugh
funny-looking
as a,
mustache.
yeah, as a coping mechanism, and some people are real annoying about that, where they'll laugh at horror movies, or they'll just call out how fake something looks, even if it doesn't, just to make themselves feel
Yeah,
better because they're scared.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of tied to that. I think it's kind of tied to that impulse that a lot of people have, that they're like trying to outsmart the movie. And it's
Right,
like,
yeah.
I won't say that
Right.
I haven't fallen I haven't fallen into that on occasion, but like, yeah, you know, people are trying, always going into movies trying to outsmart them, like trying to be unaffected by what the film is trying to accomplish. So with horror movies, it's like laughing at it because the movie's trying to scare you. So to show that you're not scared and that you're actually smarter and cooler than the movie, you laugh at it. You know,
Yeah.
that is kind of annoying. I will say though, like, in fairness, Willem Dafoe absolutely serves as the comic relief in this film.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think his performance is serious, and he's very, very good as always. But like, he has the most like direct, like laugh out loud like moments in the film for sure.
I
Oh, yeah.
love the sort of buddy cop dynamic between him and Ralph Ineson too.
Yes, dude.
Coming out of the movie, I was saying
Oh.
like I would watch dozens of movies of just those two investigating,
Supernatural crimes,
agree.
like a Sherlock,
exactly.
like a Sherlock and Watson type deal with
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe and Ralph
Yes, please.
Ineson. Dude, I love that. I had seen Ralph Ineson build in this movie, and I mean, he's been in all of Eggers' other movies except for The Lighthouse. But I expected his part to be much smaller than it was in this. I was really pleasantly surprised by how much he stuck around, and honestly, like, that was some of my favorite thematic stuff in the movie. Is like him again, like I mentioned before, like the weird like mid 19th century like pseudoscience, like when he's trying to like figure out what's wrong with Ellen, he's like, well, have her sleep in a corset, you know, like it'll improve posture, and it will settle her womb or whatever. It's like,
Yeah,
it like keeps, and like the number of times
patriarchy.
people
Like
in this movie,
the themes are apparent here, where she's just like fully stretched out with the corset.
the number of times in this movie, that one of the doctors or something will be like, too much blood. Which I feel like is kind of ironic, considering that, like, you know, the monster is a creature that drains you of your blood, and like their continual diagnosis every time is too much blood. You need to be bled. You have way too much blood in you.
Yeah, those
Which is
humors are
hilarious.
We gotta fix that. We gotta balance the humors.
Hilarious that used to be like actual medical science. Is like, this person, way too much blood. They need less of it.
Yep, you need to have less blood in you. It's crazy. No, but you're so right about Defoe and Ineson, and how they act as like foils to each other throughout so much of the film as they solve their little mysteries. As you know, like the medical student and the professor who is, you know, delved deep into the arcane. It really does feel like Dusseldorf Vice as they go around solving stuff. And I again, I would, yeah, like you guys are so right. I would watch the shit out of fucking Dusseldorf Vice.
No, it's just if you'll allow me, House MD, but spelled Haus.
House MD.
House MD.
Other cool sequences. Well, we're just, I think, yeah, we're this episode, we're just kind of hitting like our little favorite bits, I guess. I gotta mention the scene with Knock when he's in the cellar, and the old prisons, you know, the old ward where they used to keep people back in the day. Very cool touch as well. Again, the old world and the new. But the camera, there's so many long cuts in this film, or so many long shots, where it starts out over by the door looking at him, and the camera slowly revolves around him as he gives his psycho spiel. And a pigeon, he's holding a pigeon. I think it flies in his, I forget if it flies in his arms, but like he's holding the pigeon, and it is very much a live pigeon.
Yeah.
And the camera revolves around until finally we're on the opposite side of the room looking back at the door, and he's filling the frame. And the pigeon ducks down for like just a brief moment. Before the switch, and it comes up and he bites into it, and it's cool that they keep it all in the same shot, and they just use that little sleight of hand, because like when they switch the pigeon is when they're back by the door and there's movement, so they are kind of like catching the eye in the opposite direction as they switch out the pigeon, and he bites the head off of it. Very clever and fun, and ballsy to keep it all in one shot.
looked for that on this watch, and he does have the shot is like pretty tight on his face, because you can see the Ralph Ineson and the orderly sort of like over his shoulder, and there is like ample time for him to make the switch. But I do like that they sort of do the little bit of bait and switch where like he's talking about, and he's like gifts from the master. This is a pretty one. He sure loves the pretty one so much, and he's like about to bite its head off, and then he like gets distracted and he pulls it down and he like says something else crazy.
Yeah, he straight up puts that real pigeon's head in his mouth. It's wild.
Just about, and then just like all of a sudden he brings it back up and just bites his head off, and I love Ralph Ineson's response. He's like, now why would you do that, good sir?
But yeah, like they could have like to leave it like as a sleight of hand, and we're like, yeah, it is pretty apparent when they do it for sure. Is so much more fun. Like it's so much more art of movie making than like if they had just like obviously cut to a reaction shot of one of the other guys, right, or like out of like just the sunbeam in the window, or cut away from it any capacity. It's like, no, they don't. They leave it as a sleight of hand. And of course they do the same with that the final one of the final shots of the film as well, where it just keeps going, and then we revolve around the whole room. And like
I love Herr Canuck in this. The Renfield character. He's familiar. I love how over the top he is. Like he's always fucking like doing these like crazy hand gestures and like gesticulations. He's like, I will be the prince of rats and immortal and blah blah blah, all of just like typical familiar shit. And then it's like when Orlok finally shows up, like Orlok just like immediately like fucking strikes him. He's like, you're being fucking annoying. Like I hate you. I like that the scene early on, like when Thomas is like first heading to like Carpathia, and we get like the shot of Canuck like in his office with his big like pentagram on the floor, naked, and like drawing all the things that he's like spinning around and like fucking scraping his taint across the hardwood floor, getting it full of splinters and shit.
It was great because in the 22 version, like we get that same scene like at the same beat, but in the original version, like he just pulls open like a tiny book and he pulls out like his little sheet of paper that's just got some like vaguely satanic doodles and runes on it, and he's like, oh, he's evil. And like for the time that was like very spooky and scary, and so it's very fun seeing it like modernized, where like, yeah, he's rubbing his taint all over the floor and like, everything is runes. Like
they really ramp it up in that. I like when like Orlok is like, he's drawn up the contract or whatever, which we learn later is essentially an annulment of Thomas and Ellen's marriage, because the compact must be signed willingly, you know. But it's just like straight up like fucking like Warhammer runes on the contract. He like slides it over to Nicholas Hoult. He's like, the language of my forefathers.
Well, and where Nicholas has to sign,
for sure.
Yeah, like the place he has to sign is like this embellished scroll drawn onto the parchment. Like it's so sick.
A little box. Yeah, it's a little box for him. It's just like surrounded, but just like straight up ornamented runes and shit. It's like, do not worry about this for a second, Playboy. This is just the language of my forefathers. You don't have to worry about it at all. It's like totally not like a big deal.
You know, your point about like how the contract must be signed, she has to give herself willingly. I think it's really important to mention. We have to mention that, you know, Orlok, for as evil as he is, consent king. Orlok's a consent king, man. Like, yeah, we gotta put out the love. You gotta give us flowers.
Kind of spiritually rape Ellen throughout the movie.
Yeah, Ben has a point.
Like, she has to be willing or whatever. He's a consent case. My thing.
Cleveland, it's grooming. It's not consent. It's not consent if she's been groomed.
Oh, that's okay. Never mind. Cancel.
Orlok has been grooming her. He's been grooming her since childhood.
Yikes. Yeah, never mind.
Speaking of,
like
how do y'all feel about that the opening sequence of the movie? We sort of like this sort of serves as like a prologue where like she first calls out to the darkness and he comes to her spiritually and then comes on her spiritually.
I loved it.
Yeah,
I
think it's great. I really love how it concludes with Ellen sort of moaning, and at first you can't completely tell if it's of pain or pleasure, and as she goes, it becomes more clearly pleasure.
It very much sounds pleasurable, and then the hand comes around her throat.
Yeah,
we get like we see him for like a split second, and then she's just like having the seizure in the garden. I liked that. I liked that aspect of it. I think it's one of the more sort of ambiguous aspects of the movie in a good way, that sort of like her relationship with the spiritual world that allows her to make contact with Orlok in the first place. Because like, correct me if I'm wrong, Cleve, because you've seen the original most recently, but I feel like in the vast majority of these Dracula adaptations that I've seen, Orlok or Dracula always kind of like gets the hots for this character when he sees like her picture in the locket or whatever that like Thomas/Harker is carrying, is like, oh boy, you've got a sexy wife. Now I'm even more excited to move to your town so I can have sex with your wife. But like in this, it's like, it's been a long time since I've read Bram Stoker's novel, so I can't remember exactly how this goes in the book, but like in this it's really like, no, she called out and made that first like spiritual connection with him like years and years ago, and that was the impetus for him putting this plan into motion to like move to Visborg so he can have her, you know. That
it makes it so much more personal. It's great for it.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, that she has this sort of like unspoken connection to the unseen world or whatever. Like when she's telling Willem Dafoe, it's like her father thought of her as like his little changeling girl or whatever. And it was cute when she was little, but then as she got older, it got less cute, you know? And it's like, I love how it's like, that's always sort of spoken about in very general terms without getting too specific, that like, what is the nature of the spiritual world in the context of this film? We don't really know, and I don't think we need to. I appreciate that being kept more mysterious. I did hear when I watched it today, when I was in the bathroom, there were some dudes coming out of the movie, some older guys who were complaining about they didn't explain that at all. It's like,
media literacy, right, ladies and gentlemen. Like.
That's all right.
Speaking of explaining things, there's one point towards the beginning of the third act where they kind of directly explain the plan. Willem Dafoe pulls Ellen aside and they talk about her, experience with the darkness, and then kind of formulate the plan of her, bringing in Orlok willingly and, kind of saving everyone.
And sending the rest of them on a false hunt.
Yeah, what did you guys feel about like that directly being told to us right before we see it?
I like it too, because I feel like that it is important to the text as a sort of response for how much we see of like the misogyny of the time, with like what we were talking about earlier with like the doctors and being like, she's hysterical, her menstruation or whatever, too much blood, she's got way too much blood, so that's why she's menstruating a lot or whatever, and sleep in a corset, women are crazy, like all of that, to sort of have this moment where like she realizes, without even having read the book that Willem Dafoe has read, that she realizes that like I have to be the one, I'm the only one who can sort of like end this. And Willem Dafoe is like, yeah, you're right. Like I think he says, I'm an able tourist in the world of the occult, but you were born into it or whatever. And
in another day, you would have been a priestess of Set or whatever, which I thought was cool.
A priestess of Isis. Yeah. A great priestess of Isis.
Wrong Egyptian god.
And basically is like, I'm going to take your husband on a false hunt so he can feel like he's the big man who's saving you from all of this, but really you're going to be the one who's saving the rest of us. Like, I feel like that as sort of, and the fact that he doesn't, that she has already come to that same conclusion before she even speaks to him about it. I think that that's sort of a nice way of imbuing her character with like well-defined agency. Like I get it's kind of like a telling and then showing the thing. Like I see where you're coming from, but in this case it doesn't bother me, I don't think.
Okay.
No, because for me it's where we put the sword in her hand. You know, like she is the hero who has to like fulfill this quest, and in this case the quest is to like keep him there, and it all falls to her, and like none of these like silly stupid like men can handle it, and I think that scene needs to be said for it, and to me like it's what really makes it allows her to rise to the role as the true hero of the film, unlike, you know, all the other characters.
It's sort of a direct exposition bit that I don't expect from the restraint of Eggers usually. You know, I usually would expect him to imply that, you know, in less direct ways than, you know, laying out what we're about to see. Like you guys said, like, I don't mind it too much, but it just seemed a little more direct than I'm used to.
No, I think that's, and I do think that's a fair take, but again, I think that really imbues it with a more profound sense of agency for Ellen's character by sort of like making that declaration. It's like, sure, we could just see it, but and in fairness, like that's what Herzog does, right? Like she doesn't like she is left alone because her husband, because Bruno Ganz has been he's sick. He's been infected with the vampirism or whatever. It's like he isn't able to do anything to save her, so she kind of has to like take the power into her own hands. And it's like when Dracula comes to her, then she decides like, oh yeah, you know, I'll give in to him, so he, you know, until the sun rises or whatever. But in this, it feels more so like a true, like a statement of purpose. It's like, my husband can't do what he wants to do, so he needs to be kept busy so I can do what needs to be done. You know, and I think that's important. I think it's important for Ellen's arc. Because prior to this, is like she spends most of the movie stripped of agency because of the time period, because of like the social sort of like stigmas that are foisted upon women at that time, and you know, and all of that stuff. So the fact that she is like decisively taking power into her own hands is important, and I think it ultimately makes her act more profound, and the conclusion, that final scene, more profound because of it, personally.
Yeah. And that final scene, speaking of which, is really incredibly shot. Talk about an incredible scene.
Incredibly shot, incredibly sequenced, incredibly acted, just really, really powerful and beautiful too, I think.
Yeah, and combined with the parallel action going on of them, you know, raiding the cemetery, and, you know, Willem Dafoe lighting everything on fire. It's great.
I love the bait and switch where they break into the mansion and they're like, we're going to drive an iron stake through this foul creature's heart. And it's like they come to the sarcophagus and the room is just overflowing with rats and everything. And Nicholas Hoult raises up the stake and they push the lid off and he drives it down, and it's fucking Knock instead of Orlok. And he's like, ah, fuck, I was supposed to be the Prince of Rats. My master has forsaken me. You know? And then Willem Dafoe's last little bit of like setting fire to everything is really great.
It's great.
Yeah.
I will say, as an aside, because we skipped over it just briefly, the scene. I talked about Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance not being the strongest here as Friedrich, but I will say the one scene we get that really showcases him, I think he's very strong in, and that's when he goes to the tomb of the kids and his wife, and
The little coffins.
He's caressing her body, and talking about kind of being with her one final time. I thought that was an incredibly performed scene.
And then when they find him dead in there, he's been like having sex with her corpse.
Yeah, it's like, nasty.
He's like on top of her, like with her legs open, like in the coffin. It's really grotesque. I think this was a very happy accident, and it could have contributed because the theater I watched it in today with the bulb was kind of dim. But in that scene where he's like laying across her coffin, the way that the light plays on his coat, I thought that Orlok's hand was like resting on his shoulder, like as he was laying there. Again, that feels like one of those things, like there's no way that could have been intentional, and it was probably just the dim, because I didn't notice the first time. It was probably just the dim bulb in the theater I was in, but I was like, oh man, this is really, for a second I was like, whoa, how did I notice that the last time? This is really fucking cool. But just like that, your Orlok is there with him. He's death with his hand upon everything. But yeah, the final sequence where Ellen sacrifices herself and gives herself willingly to Orlok, and keeps him occupied until the sun rises. Really excellent.
Might I add too, when she reaches up and pulls him back down onto her chest, that shit's right out of Herzog's Nosferatu. Like,
yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's right. Like, again, just further to our earlier point that there's no way he like hadn't seen it.
Where he hears the rooster crowing as the sun comes up, and he pulls away from her, and she pulls him back to her. Yeah. In this one, she even says more, like sexually. And he goes back to just fucking slurping. But yeah, man, that the shit where the sun comes up and he looks out the window and we see him fully bathed in light for the first time and see how fucking nasty and decrepit he is, and then just basically like this was another take I like. In Herzog, his eyes just go white and he just kind of falls over dead on the ground. And lots of vampire stuff, they burn up in the sun. But I like in this one how it's like the blood just like all leaves his body,
as the shadow does as well. Yeah,
pouring out his eyes and out his mouth. And then when we get the final shot of the film, which is really, really gorgeous, like the overhead shot of the bed with his like desiccated body lying on top of her with the little fucking skeleton legs, his goofy little legs. But the bed is just like soaked in blood, and Willem Dafoe has like scattered the lilacs all around. Really,
I
really
love that touch.
Exquisite stuff. Yeah,
because it's great, because like when Orlok he doesn't just take her locket in this one, he smells it and he says lilac, like, and he smells like the flowers of that, like what is the bit in The Witcher, lilac and gooseberries.
Yeah, exactly, that's what Yennefer smells like.
That's right, yeah, the Yennefer smell. But the
Yennefer smell.
I love that he's been surrounded by lilacs at the end. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, and the bed is just covered in blood, that like exposing him to the sunlight as the spirit leaves the body. Everything that was sustaining him, all of the blood has just drained out of him, leaving him a shriveled, decrepit little husk.
And then the shot just keeps fucking going. Like, That's what's so crazy about it to me is like we start from the door facing out the window as the sun rises, and then we go around around the bed, and we see his face as he looks up at the sun out the window, and the blood drains from him, and he falls over the top of her, and then the camera stays there as the guys enter the scene, and then the camera swings back around and down, and then back up
cuts
again as Willem Dafoe. What's up?
These are cuts. They're not. It's not one continuous shot. These are cuts.
It's not one continuous shot. I thought it was.
It's not one continuous shot. I need to watch it again. These are cuts. I mean, it's sequenced very well. But yeah, I mean the shot of like Willem Dafoe coming in, and what is one shot is like, yeah, we see her face, and when Orlok, his head is turned away towards the window, and Nicholas Hoult kind of kneels down beside her and like takes her hand, and Willem Dafoe goes around the bed, and then the camera pans up. This is one shot. That's like, yeah, the sun. He's silhouetted,
reflected in the mirror.
He picks up the cat. He picks up her cat, which I like. And
he's also original 22 version. It starts with her holding a cat. Like, and there's little bits of cats throughout the 22 one as well. So that is a little homage there, which is very sweet.
Yeah, and I wonder. I feel like there's probably some old lore around that. I feel like spirits, like evil spirits and stuff, like don't like cats. I feel like that's kind of a
the Brendan Fraser mummy from the 90s.
Yeah, the mummy doesn't like cats. Yeah,
he doesn't like cats either. For sure. Maybe that's where they got it.
Cats are foils to rats when you think about it, right?
That's true. That's true.
They do eat the rats.
They do catch and drive away the rats, and and Orlok is rat-like. Less rat-like in this than in either of the other Nosferatus, but again, I appreciate they took the spin on his own thing. It's like, yeah, during that sex scene, it's like you really get like a good look at his back and like the back of his head. He's just got like bare skull back there. Like he's a literal rotting corpse that is imbued with a spirit of evil. And yeah, I really love that. I love how fucking.
I like how he still has some hair on the top of his head.
Just his one little bit, his little cowlick that he's got the whole.
Yeah, it almost begs the question: does he use product? Just to gel it up a little bit.
No, his
own semen or blood, probably
blood and semen in his hair and his mustache. Yeah, I feel like he's got more hair on his upper lip than he does on his head, but that's okay,
I have one last tiny thing, and then I'm good. And that is in terms of the costuming and the rest of it. During the film, I remember thinking, man, Willem Dafoe's pipe is so outrageous, it's almost distracting.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's about 2 feet long. And then I rewatched the 22 version, and it starts with that same character smoking a pipe that goes he's sitting in a chair, and it goes from his mouth down to the floor, like it's literally a fucking bassoon of a pipe. Oh, yeah. And it's even more ridiculous in the 22 one. So amazing. Like,
hell yeah.
I did think that was kind of funny. Actually, I think I posted a photo of it in the Discord also, but like, because I had to grab a screenshot of it. Also in the 22 movie,
I'm sure all that shit was period accurate. Knowing Eggers, I'm sure people in 1838 were smoking on those they were honking on those bassoons.
But people love a fucking cock allegory, man. Like whether it's a huge pickup truck or a big sword, you gotta have a big pipe. Like everyone wants to have the big, ornate, cool looking pipe. Like I get it. It's fun.
One last little thing I want to touch on is a fun line in this movie is when, at one point when Willem Dafoe is leaving the house, he tells Ralph Ineson, no more ether, don't give her any more ether. And Ralph Ineson says, but she will rave through the night. And then Willem Dafoe says, well then rave she must, and walks out. And I guarantee how fucking long before some EDM artist puts that before a drop in...
Oh God, they need
to. Then rave she'll rave throughout the night. Then rave she must. But how long?
My favorite throwaway line was, I think it was Willem Dafoe who said it. It might be Ineson, but he says, I've seen sights that would make Isaac Newton crawl back in his mother's womb.
Yeah.
No, that's Willem Dafoe. Yeah, that's in the same speech
Yeah.
when he talks about being blinded by the gaseous light of science.
Yeah, so silly.
So fucking cool, man. It's silly, but it's cool.
It's both. You can't have both.
It's both. It's both. I mean, I feel like there's definitely more to talk about, but I feel like we've hit on everything that I wanted to touch on. How are you feeling, boys? Are we ready to rate? Y'all got other shit you want to add?
I think we're ready to rate. The only other minor thing would be like the score. I thought was really solid.
Oh yeah, dude, man, especially in that final sequence, like when the sun rises and Orlok is killed, like the music in that is really incredible. I looked up this composer. It's a dude called Robin Carolyn, and he has literally only 2 composition credits to his name. It is Nosferatu and The Northman, which I think also has an incredible score. Those are the only 2 things he's done the score for. Crazy.
I wonder if he's possibly like a ghost scorer for like a larger organization like Hans Zimmer studio or whatever, because I know that like Hans Zimmer like is like both a man but also represents like an entire like a small brand. Industry of
Hans Zimmer is a brand.
And like I mean, written by other composers and things, so it's very possible that maybe it's on like one of those circuits or something. Like hard to say, but like
this dude doesn't seem to be
Northman, like it's got to be. I'd be really curious to know like more.
I mean, those are his only film or TV credits, right? But or I guess like entertainment industry, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't worked before. Like, I mean, he's obviously he's obviously a real composer, but maybe he has not done.
That would be like such an Eggers thing to do.
TV,
is to get
video
someone
game
who's like
before,
done like musical, like cool like historic musical study or something. I would be surprised if that's the case.
Like you said, you don't just come into and write the score for The Northman having never written anything before. But I mean, those are his only 2 IMDb credits if we're talking like film, video, film, TV, video games, so on and so forth. But yeah, no, I mean, I think the music in this is really incredible. And also, yeah, man, his fucking score for The Northman, I get that piece stuck in my head all the time of when he gets picked up by the Valkyrie and is being like ridden across the sky. Like I get that shit gets stuck in my head all the time. But yeah, is it time to rate? I guess I'll start this one. I'm not considering Ben's feelings. I'm certainly not expecting this to be a golden pod, but I did struggle with this one a little bit. I had to wait a couple of days after I watched it before I was even comfortable rating it, because like I've given every other Eggers film a 5 out of 5, and it's like at a certain point I have to be like, am I just a simp for Eggers? Like, is my like it doesn't really matter, but like, is my critical brain like on, or am I just like blinded by how much I like this dude's other stuff? That
the gaseous light of Eggers.
Yes. Am I blinded by the gaseous light of Robert Eggers' other movies? And I wasn't 100% sure on the answer to that until I watched it a second time today, and I feel much more comfortable with my 5 out of 5. I think, probably at this point is probably my least favorite Eggers, but I think I've said that about every single Robert Eggers movie that's come out, is that like it's my least favorite Eggers, but then I watch it more and it's like, I don't know, man, when they're all 5 out of 5s, like choosing a best to worst is like such an arbitrary thing. Like I think that there are plenty of valid criticisms for this movie, but for me, for what it's trying to accomplish, I think that it achieves those goals perfectly, and it is a truly unique take on the story that I haven't seen before, and that I think distinguishes it from Murnau and from Herzog in the way that it should, and it doesn't just feel like a comfortable retreading of common ground. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for me.
Having a lot of troubles kind of landing on a rating for this, you know. Since I've seen it, my internal rating has gone anywhere from 3.5 to 5. Honestly, I've been at points where I'm like, yeah, this, despite my problems, this is a 5, and I've been like, oh, the problems are so apparent to me that this is a 3.5. You know, I do think the fact that this is so in his wheelhouse is a bit of a double-edged sword. Ultimately, it's okay for a director to work where he's comfortable in, and especially when this is kind of his dream project of sorts. At the same time, when you're filling such big shoes as those filled by directors like Murnau and Herzog and Coppola, like, I feel like you need to put a big stamp on whatever you make and make it truly your own. And I think at times this film does that. At other times it feels like the reverence for the material, whether it's the original Stoker story or the Murnau interpretation, kind of box it into more of a traditional retelling. And again, like, when the movie looks so great and aesthetically it's so excellently crafted, it's hard to complain about that too much. But I think to really elevate it beyond that, it would take a little bit more for me. So I think for me, it's a 4 out of 5. Again, fantastic movie, and I'm hoping on rewatches my opinion only grows of it. But right now I'm feeling a 4.
4 is a strong rating. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I think it's going to be pretty obvious from me what it's going to be. But I want to touch on the real reason why I'm going to give this movie an obvious 5 out of 5, and that is because those downtown sets of what's the name of this city? The sets.
Gisborg, I think it's a fake city, but
That's right.
But they did shoot. They did shoot. They did shoot in Prague.
Right. Yeah. Those tight corridors reminded me so much of the sets from Muppet Christmas Carol that I just have to give it a 5 out of 5. The big top hats, all of the people talking about how much they hate this one rich guy. I mean, there's a lot of comparisons to Muppet Christmas Carol here, and there's also a good use of puppetry and some very delightful rats. Yeah, it's I got to say, to one of my all-timer films. It's I think it's a sister film to Muppet Christmas Carol, and during the winter season, it's been very lovely watching both. So, and I would recommend both. That's going to be my recommendation this episode as well. A little early, but yeah, easy 5 out of 5 for me.
It's past Christmas.
That's true. It's even past New Year's at this point.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
You know, you're kind of cooking though, because if you think about it, Dracul really is sort of the ultimate Scrooge.
Yep.
If you really
that's
think
what I'm saying.
it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well,
yeah, he's Scrooge. You know,
that will give Robert Eggers' long-awaited Nosferatu an average of 4.7 out of 5 from the Pod Boys.
I have 2 questions for y'all.
Okay.
2 questions before we move on. So first, I want to hear y'all's ratings of where you would rank the 4 Eggers films so far. Because out of the 4, you've given all 4 of them 5 out of 5. To me, it's tricky, but I think I can do it. I think it's Lighthouse number 1, Northman number 2, The Witch number 3, and Nosferatu number 4.
I feel like this could change depending on the day, and probably would. I think I might just say order of release, best to worst. Like, The Witch is still my favorite. I think the only The only question there is, depending on the day, I think you could swap the Northman and the Lighthouse. Um, it very much depends on what type of movie I'm looking for. And Nosferatu ends up at the end only because I've seen it the least, and I've had the least time to like really digest it. I mean, I've seen it more than y'all have at this point, but even so, like I've seen The Witch a dozen times, The Lighthouse half that, The Northman half that, you know, and Nosferatu only twice. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels bad to say that Nosferatu is my least favorite Eggers movie when I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5. But like when you're ranking perfects, like what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
I guess
you're comparing the
yeah,
most minor quality.
yeah.
So.
It's
What would you say, Cleve?
Oh man, I don't know. I need to watch this movie again. It's I'm coming off of it. Like it's been a couple of days, but even still, I'm coming off it a little hot. And but I would say I think and again too, like it depends on the mood. I know they're all moody films, but even still, like it's such a golden apples and golden oranges situation. Like some days I want a golden apple, some days I want a golden orange. I don't really like ranking like that. I think, but if I have to, gun to my head,
and there is a gun to
You
your
think
head.
it's a gun to your head.
gun to my head.
Yes.
The, my
It's
my
a
camera's
there.
too tight for you to see it, but there is a gun like right there.
It's a big
Yeah,
gun too.
real big. Yeah.
Bazooka, actually.
That's right. It's a yeah. All right, anyway, probably The Witch, and then this, and then The Northman, and then The Lighthouse. But the idea of The Lighthouse being at the bottom of any list is crazy to me. Like it feels wrong.
I know, dude. Any of
Like,
these being at the bottom of the list
I
feels wrong.
don't think there's a right, and that's why like it feels fucked up. Like I can't put The Northman at the bottom. I can't put The Witch at the bottom, and I'm certainly not putting Nosferatu at the bottom. It's too much like Muppet Christmas Carol. So like I just don't know where I could put it. I don't know what I can do about
Respect.
that. I did just want to mention too, since you're getting your little bits in at the end. I want to get one, and that is also not only is our version of Dracul in this one a consent king, he's also a bisexual king, as she explicitly said. That what's her name, Emily? Sorry, because there's the
Ellen?
Nosferatu version, there's the Dracula version where she's Mina, and I can never remember. But what's her face? She sort of says
Ellen.
to Ellen, says to Nicholas Holt like that he took you like a lily white flower, and that's so fucking awesome to me. That like it's explicit in this, like, and that's so much more badass than like a fucking Interview with the Vampire or whatever. And I love that.
I will say, not a consent king. He did very much groom her from a teenager.
I know.
Not
I mean,
a consent
silly.
king.
Yeah,
Not a
no,
consent king.
he's an actual
bisexual.
He's the monster.
Bisexual king. I'll give you that.
Harvey Weinstein, but yeah, he does look pretty fucked up.
I haven't seen Harvey Weinstein recently. I've heard he's looking pretty bad. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I think he's scarier looking.
Maybe he is.
I think Harvey Weinstein is a little more bloated. Yes, he has way too much blood. Honestly,
way too much blood. Honestly, someone should hook him up with Orlok / Dracula and be like, "I will drain you dry, Mr. Weinstein."
Weinstein. Like,
Weinstein. I'm going to suck your shit. So
let's steal us Adrenochrome. Let's make that happen. Yeah. I think good idea. I like it.
Ben, do we have some prediction results for this?
Yeah, I do have a second question though. Okay. After this, first thing obviously that the internet goes to is what's next for Robert Eggers. I've heard 3 possible films that might be coming. Honestly, what I've heard from Robert Eggers in an interview is he said he had like 5 possible projects just out there, and it really depends on what's picked up next, right? Ultimately. But the 3 projects I've heard the most concretely are he has a medieval night movie.
I've heard that one as well.
He has a Western.
Also heard that one.
He has an adaptation or a remake of Labyrinth.
What?
That's cap.
Jim Henson?
I don't believe that one. I don't believe that one. That's cap.
Fuck,
Yeah, the
you
David
can't.
Bowie Labyrinth. Yeah. Which one of those three would you want to see the most? Is my
The night
question
one.
for y'all.
The night one,
The
the
night?
medieval one, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
See,
I
to
think
me-
if there's one,
Oh, go ahead.
I think if there's one thing that Robert Eggers excels at, it's that showing how alien and bizarre we like humans were in like previous eras. Like I think that's one of the things that The Witch excels at the most is just like how truly like sort of incomprehensible the Puritan mindset is to like us today. And I think that that's only heightened when you go back to medieval Europe. And I think that Robert Eggers would make that so interesting and weird. I mean, outside of him doing a medieval knight story, there really doesn't seem to be much information. I would, of course, err on the side of I would like to see a medieval horror story from him. I think that would be very cool. Like maybe set like during the Black Death or something, like some weird like plague demons and so like I would love to see
Got all of his rat
like,
handler hookups now, so let's make it happen.
I would love to see like a medieval depiction of like Christianity and demons and hell and stuff like that. Like I think that would be super cool and interesting.
Well, speaking of draining blood, I am being eaten alive by mosquitoes out here now. So if I would love to rap.
You have an
Mosquitoes.
answer, Cleve? Answer that. You said the night as well.
We're almost
Yeah,
done.
I said the night one.
Okay.
All right, what are we
Honestly,
doing next?
I think that's too much in his wheelhouse. Again, I want to see a big swing from Eggers. I want to see something that feels outside of, familiar territory for him, which is why I think sort of a weird Western would be very cool.
Yeah,
You
Western
still
would be
get the
cool.
historic accuracy stuff, but you get
Yeah.
into territory that he's not as comfortable in, so to speak. So
I could be
we'll
super
see.
down with a weird Western. You have some prediction results for us for
Yes.
Nosferatu?
Yes, we do. Again, we predicted this technically last year, but this is going to be the first set of predictions for 2025. We have the old predictions, but they'll of course carry over. So for opening weekend box office, I predicted 14 million. Cleve, you predicted 72 million.
Man, I
And
wish.
Predicted 1.5 million. It is currently sitting at 21.2 million.
Hell yeah.
Holy bejesus. I said one
Which
and a
is
half
quite good.
million?
Yeah,
What was I fucking on? What was I on?
I don't even know.
I think I based that off of like The Witch, but like I don't know why I did that. That seems
Yeah.
Yeah, Christmas
But
release.
yeah, Christmas
yeah,
release.
super happy to see it. Finding some success.
That's great.
Looks like it had a $50 million budget, and gross worldwide already is 44, roughly. So it's going to make
After
its money
one
back.
weekend, it's going to make its money back. Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I get that one. Rotten Tomatoes, I predicted 90. Cleve, you predicted 92. And Tease, you predicted 93. It is currently sitting at 87. So I get that one as well. For collective rating, we all predicted 5s. So I guess we all get that, or none of us, depending on how you look at it. And then who would give it the highest rating? Tease, you and I both said you would give it the highest, and Cleve, you said you would give it the highest. And so I guess again, we're all right. Yes,
you're all right. Yay!
So for comments, I said people on the internet will want to fuck the Dracula.
Wrong.
Which I think is actually the opposite of true.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to fuck this Dracula except for me.
Yeah. Cleve, you said Willem steals both the show and our hearts. Hopefully some good rat material. I would say yeah to both of those.
Yep. I think so too.
And then,
I don't know if you I think Lily Rose Depp really steals the show, if I'm being honest.
Yeah,
Willem is
I would
great.
too.
Willem is great as expected, but Lily Rose Depp
Willem steals our heart.
He does steal our hearts.
He does steal our hearts.
You
said Billy is going to be a grade A freak as Count Orlok, Shades of Pennywise. There won't be enough rats in this.
I kind of stand by that one. No, I kind of stand by though there won't be enough rats in this one compared to the Herzog one. We're talking like a third of the rats. There's that one scene where they go in to burn the sarcophagus where the room is just like covered in rats. But there's like so
an Indiana
many
Jones sequence.
There's so many scenes in Herzog where there's rats. I stand by there not being enough rats, and I stand by Billy being grade A freak. Shades of Pennywise, no, he this is a totally different thing. I'm not even sure why I said that to begin with, but otherwise, yeah, I'm happy with those predictions. I think I was right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sets us off well. Off to a good start.
To the races.
I'm in the lead.
Off to the races, and we'll have some more new results in a couple of weeks. But next week, if I'm correct, it's my pick. Yes. And I'm sort of doing one of my classic Daybreakers style picks in the sense that it's not a good movie per se, and I would never necessarily argue that, but I do think it's an interesting movie that will be fun to talk about. And so we're going to be talking about Horsemen, a film directed by somebody we have talked about on the podcast before, Jonas Åkerlund, who directed Lords of Chaos. This is a sort of police procedural thriller horror Silence of the Lambs style movie he did back in, like, I want to say 2010. Starring Dennis Quaid. That is incredibly stupid, and I could not be more excited to talk about it with y'all. So
can't wait.
I've never seen it, so I'm excited.
Oh boy, oh buddy, yeah. Cleve and I watched it in high school a number of times, but if you've never seen it, Ben, you're in for a treat. This definitely fits in the canon of movies like Law Abiding Citizen, starring Gerard
Butler,
which is another. Or Mirrors, yeah, definitely in that same era, same vein. So I'm excited to talk about that with y'all next week. But until then, if you like the show, leave us a 5-star rating or review. Share an episode with a friend. Join the Patreon, patreon.com/podpeoplepod. If you're one of our Patreon subscribers, there's a possibility that you've been watching the raw video of this episode instead of just listening to it. We're very much still figuring that out, so this is a pretty rough one. But if that sounds like something that you might like to do, head on over and join our Patreon. This will be available for every tier. So if you want to watch the video of our webcams, then
if you're gonna watch me blow away mosquitoes, you can do that. Pretty neat.
On future episodes, Cleveland will have a real computer and a real microphone, so on and so forth. Ideally.
And you'll see my real face. I'll do a face reveal.
Anywho, shout out to our honorary pod boys, Sam, Zach, Micah, and Mitchell. Y'all are the best. And of course, you can follow us Letterboxd, Pod People Pod. You'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. Honestly, I think this week I'm just going to recommend Bram Stoker's Dracula, not the book, but the Francis Ford Coppola movie. Because if you want an adaptation of this story that is way hornier and more erotic, but also like really beautifully photographed and some really incredible set design and costumes and all of that good shit, check it out. Gary Oldman is Dracula. Fucking Anthony Hopkins is the Van Helsing character, and then you've also got a young Keanu and a young Winona Ryder in the John and Mina Harker roles. So yeah, it's fun. It's a fun time. Check it out.
Hell yeah! Well, we've been talking about Dracula this whole episode. I'd be remiss to not mention the most important Dracula Flow. Zaza
yes.
got me speaking Esperanto. Dracula
true.
Flow 1 through 5. It's I guess you could
bugs
call it a
back.
web series.
Yeah, sure.
Some of the greatest freestyles of all time, undoubtedly. I was trying to change my GIF background to Dracula Flow, but it's not working. So just imagine an old man in melting Dracula hair paint.
Yeah,
This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
The Widow's Peak gets deeper every episode.
I am him.
Like I said, the bugs are back. You already know my recommendation. It was the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol.
I stand by it. That's it for me.
I stand by. Well, thank you for listening and maybe watching. Happy 2025. Hope you're excited to join us for a new year in horror, because we're certainly excited to be here. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep your shit topped off.
Keep on
Goodbye.
second.